Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in because, wow, the internet has been absolutely melting down this week. If you've been anywhere on social media, you've seen the hyperbole, right? People are either screaming that cinema is totally saved or that their childhoods are ruined forever. Today, we're unpacking one of the boldest moves in recent blockbuster history, casting Sadie Sink's Jean Grey as the main villain in Spider-Man: Brand New Day. We're going to break down exactly why this was an absolute masterstroke for franchise building, character integration, and just top-tier storytelling.
So why put an X-Man in a Spider-Man movie? It feels kind of like an odd pairing at first, doesn't it? The biggest controversy right now is that Jean Grey isn't your traditional webhead villain. You go in expecting Doc Ock, Venom, Green Goblin, the usual suspects. And for some diehard Spidey fans, it literally felt like the third act hijacked this gritty street-level story and shoved an X-Men origin into it. But actually, scratch that. That perspective totally misses the bigger picture. Marvel had a highly specific 4-part master plan here. So let's dig into exactly why this crossover was a stroke of absolute genius.
All right, let's kick things off with Pillar 1, the ultimate spoilable mystery. To really get this, we've got to talk about modern Hollywood marketing. $800 million. That is the magic number right now. Look, post-pandemic, the cinematic landscape completely shifted. Gone are the days when a superhero flick would just coast to $1 billion for just existing. Today, the only films crossing that massive worldwide threshold are what we call spoilable events. Those are the ones you absolutely have to see on opening night, or else you risk some random person on Twitter completely ruining a massive, earth-shattering cameo. Brand New Day was the second fastest movie ever to hit $1 billion. And guys, that is no coincidence. Marvel desperately needed a way to manufacture that massive opening weekend FOMO, that fear of missing out. Think back to the marketing rollout. Marvel actually showed their hand super early with Hulk and the Punisher. We knew they were coming, so those appearances were never going to be a surprise. But they completely hid their trump card. They teased Sadie Sink as this mysterious, body-hopping telepathy lurking in the shadows. Fans were going wild. Was she Shriek, Madam Web, maybe the Mutant Queen? By aggressively guarding her actual identity until opening night, they manufactured an insane rush to theaters. And man, when Peter finally uncovers her Jean Grey persona in that jaw-dropping third act, the explosive theater reactions proved this massive gamble paid off. Big time. Which brings us right into Pillar 2, the morally gray mutant. When you sit back and actually break down Jean's actions in this film, these are definitely not the choices of a friendly neighborhood Avenger. Driven by her sister being kidnapped by an evil organization, Jean operates on a deeply ruthless ends justify the means mentality. I mean, she's invading innocent minds without consent. She infiltrates damage control. She goes so far as to force Mary Jane off a building just to prove a point and threaten Peter. She even breaks Bruce Banner's mind to unleash the Hulk, fully knowing a gamma monster could literally level city blocks. It's a trail of absolute destruction. To Peter, she is a terrifying villain who has to be stopped. That is, until he slowly realizes she's actually a profoundly tragic, desperate kid. It feels incredibly dark for a quote-unquote hero, right? But operating in that moral gray area, that's actually a foundational staple of X-Men lore. Unlike Captain America, mutant leaders have a long, heavily documented history of making shocking choices just to survive. Professor X has wiped memories and manipulated the minds of his closest allies. Emma Frost literally tortured her fellow mutants. Cyclops completely abandoned his wife and son. The X-Men have never been your typical squeaky clean Boy Scouts. So grounding Jean's tragic, destructive actions in this deep comic lore makes her the absolute perfect, terrifying antagonist to clash against Peter Parker's strict moral code. So Marvel isn't breaking their rules here at all. In fact, they're honoring a massive one. They're treating Jean's debut exactly like Wolverine's. Think about it. Wolverine didn't start out as this noble, self-sacrificing hero. He debuted as a straight-up villain fighting the Hulk in Incredible Hulk number 180, way back in 1974. He was an antagonist first, before eventually finding redemption and becoming, the cornerstone of the X-Men. By positioning Jean as a villain straight out of the gate, Marvel is honoring a time-tested tradition. It basically guarantees her eventual redemption arc is going to feel incredibly earned. Let's move on to Pillar 3, fear, hatred, and mutates. This movie brilliantly establishes a totally wild double standard in the universe. The public absolutely worships mutates, people like Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four, who were born human but gained powers later in life through some freak accident or science experiment. I mean, Spider-Man literally gets the key to this city. He has massive crowds cheering outside his hospital window. But mutants? Mutants are born with the X gene. They represent the next step in human evolution, meaning biologically they're a completely different species. And because of that inherent biological difference, they're despised. They're hunted in the streets and experimented on by shadow organizations like damage control. It's a completely unfair, deeply entrenched societal divide.
And here is where the movie just hits you right in the chest. Jean breaches Peter's mind and stumbles onto that defining, incredibly painful memory of Aunt May's speech. Aunt May tells Peter, "You're special, and there will be people who do terrible things to you because you're special." In any other franchise, an X-Men origin just wouldn't mesh with the Spider-Man story. But this single quote, it bridges the entire gap. It connects Spider-Man's isolated burden directly to Jean's trauma of being hunted since childhood, feeling entirely alone, and watching her sister get stolen away. It's this masterful emotional parallel that just bonds them perfectly. But the true tragedy is how quickly good intentions are corrupted in this universe. Peter built his mutant inhibitor tech simply to manage his own overwhelming burden, right? But damage control instantly twists it into a torture device for Jean. They weaponize a tool meant for healing. And for fans of the comics, this is a seriously chilling preview. We are basically watching the birth of the iconic anti-mutant colors right before our very eyes. The exact technology Peter meant to help people with becomes the ultimate instrument of oppression for the next phase of the cinematic universe. Talk about a gut punch. Brand New Day forces us to confront a really uncomfortable truth about the whole mutant mythos. Yes, Jean is a tragic victim of a cruel system, but she is also a weapon of mass destruction. She manipulates, she controls, she destroys. She tricks Peter, mind controls MJ, and unleashes a literal gamma monster on a populated city. Think about it. If you were just an average, powerless person living in New York trying to commute to work, wouldn't you be terrified of her too? By making her a legitimate, awe-inspiring threat, the movie justifies exactly why everyday people harbor such intense fear and prejudice against mutants in the first place. Finally, let's look at Pillar 4, the Black Panther formula. Post-Endgame, Marvel learned a really hard lesson about audience fatigue. Trying to get viewers to care about a brand new slate of heroes from scratch, like the Eternals, was a massive uphill battle. And throwing a brand new, fully recast X-Men team at the screen all at once? Incredibly risky. So they dusted off a proven Trojan horse strategy. Just like Captain America's Civil War used a known, beloved heroes movie to flawlessly launch Black Panther, which, remember, led directly to a billion-dollar solo film, Brand New Day introduces Jean Grey. And crucially, it pulls this off without ever stalling Peter Parker's own journey. He still gets his incredible character development and finally unlocks his organic webbing. By giving Jean the spotlight here, Marvel completely dodges that old Fox Studio trap. You know the one, where the films often felt a lot like Wolverine and his backup dancers because everyone was constantly fighting for screen time in a massive ensemble cast. There were always just too many characters to service. But in just this one solo Spider-Man movie, Jean gets way more breathing room, more profound character development, and honestly, a more compelling arc than she received in a decade of those older team films. They're building her foundation perfectly before the rest of the team even arrives. By weaving such complex sociology, morally gray actions, and truly justified public fear into a Spider-Man story, Marvel has laid the ultimate foundation. The board is officially set. The weapons exist. The public is terrified. So we have to ask ourselves, how long until a leader like Magneto looks at this exact, justified fear and decides it's time to go to war? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.